Each month, I stand at the threshold, holding the door open to you, the witch, the seeker, the mystic, who is looking to understand their path a little bit better and to understand their magic. Twice monthly, I offer classes to our community. In our Seekers Alley, I offer a free class to everyone where we discuss a very specific esoteric topic. The second class of each month is reserved for our inner circle, and this is where we go deep. This is where we take theory and we put it to action, where we can see how our magic flows out into the world to create the change we most desire. And when you support the Rebel Mystic Coven, you are directly supporting this podcast and the Unbound Priestess podcast, showing me that all the effort that goes into producing each and every episode is worth it and that you love what we produce. I look forward to seeing you in the Coven. I hope you will join me soon. Check the link in the show notes for more information or visit leandrawitchwood.com to join the Coven.
This time in the Magic Kitchen, we're talking about the importance of cultural attribution when we adopt traditions in our magical practices.
I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elise Wells.
And welcome to the Magic Kitchen podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between. This is not going to be a conversation on cultural appropriation because that conversation has been had. And our listeners are not the type to be culturally appropriating. We know you. We know that's not something you're doing. Appropriation is when you profit off of somebody else's culture with zero attribution, meaning not giving any credit to them, and passing it off as your own. So, thinking back to a very classic example, when Kim Kardashian tried to invent cornrows, that was classically culturally appropriative.
Right. It's about power, extraction, and harm.
Yes, exactly. That is not what we're going to talk about today because y'all ain't doing that. And you don't need to hear about it. You already know not to do it. Instead, we're going to talk about something that I do see people neglecting to do. And I don't think it comes from a place of harm. I think it comes from just, ignorance. And I never mean ignorance in a mean way. It simply means not knowing. I think people just don't know that attributing certain practices to the culture it comes from is very respectful and important. And in our spiritual practice, having respect for our spirits is really important. And so where they come from, where these practices come from, knowing that and honoring that is very important. So we're going to talk about the ways we see people maybe not doing it and how you can start doing it. It's not really a hard thing. It's just a conscious shift.
I just want to emphasize that it's about relationship. It's about not simply downloading something or dropping in and claiming a tradition as your own. It's about actively practicing that tradition, how it shows up. And not all traditions are closed, but some are. And that's where the respect has to happen. If you're not initiated or trained in a specific tradition, then there's a fragment there. And Elise and I both come from traditions where we've been trained. They look very different. And we've also incorporated our own gnosis to the traditions we currently practice. And so in that, we're creating our own traditions. We're creating our own lore, our own associations.
And I think that's what we encourage in every listener. Every student I've ever worked with, I always encourage you to find other teachers too. I never, ever would advocate for that. My high priestess certainly didn't. It's never about finding the one. If we wanted the one, we'd look at monotheism. We are here to find
right?
our path. And that means pulling from various sources. And that's not a bad thing. That's a better thing. I think, it's like if you only ever ate one type of cuisine, you'd miss out on so much good food. And so it's the same with our spiritual practices. You've really got to be aware that diversity is a good thing, but knowing the source of that diversity is important. So we're going to talk about, within witchcraft, there are traditions and roots to those practices in certain traditions, but also in cultural ways. Some of the ways that we see people neglecting to credit the cultures that folklore or tradition comes from.
Right. And I do want to touch on this again, because we've talked about it before, but I think it bears repeating, especially in this context. When we are consuming our witchcraft practice from snippets, from 1-minute videos, from social media that doesn't give us the full context, we are not getting the depth of it. We're only getting the idea. We're getting the inspiration. Cool. Good. Now take that further.
Yeah. And that's on you as the practitioner to take it further. Because I will get comments sometimes. I'll make a 7-second video about Artemis, goddess of sovereignty. Something very basic, very introductory. And they're saying, well, what about this? Isn't she also that? Isn't she also that? Yes, of course she is. This is a 7-second video.
You can't. This isn't a masterclass.
Yeah. I host those too. Come to one of those. Then we'll get into it,
right.
But
exactly.
It's not meant to be beyond an introduction on social media. And then it's on you as the practitioner to learn more.
Right. Right. And that's where we encourage our listeners, and we encourage each other. I mean, Lisa and I do a lot of reading. And we encourage you to do the same. Pick up books. Find books on topics that interest you. So you want to learn more about Artemis, go find a book. Go find somebody who works with her who has written a book and read about her. And that goes for any deity, really. Read about them. Read different resources, different sources, not just one. Again, we're sampling the buffet, not the one plate.
Yeah.
We're not just surviving off of mac and cheese.
So let's talk about some examples we see of using folklore or tradition as words inappropriately online. So I think sometimes, maybe it's just time on their hands or whatever. I will see people post something. Like I saw this the other day. A spider web in the corner of your room, according to folklore, represents good luck. You read the caption, you go to their bio. What folklore? What folklore? What country
tradition?
Is it from? What culture is it from? Was it your grandmother who told you that? And that's maybe just something local. Share that with us. That origin is important. To respect the source material of that wisdom is what we're talking about here. And then we might see the same. According to tradition, I saw that one the other day. According to tradition, Baba Yaga lives on a house on stilts in the woods. Well, if somebody's never heard of Baba Yaga, they might not understand that's a Slavic myth. You have to name that. What cultures, what countries, what modern names do those cultures have? What were they called in antiquity? What were they called 1,000 years ago? How have those cultures been affected? If you're going to start a relationship with Baba Yaga, knowing what the Soviet Union did to those lands, knowing how that changed the people's relationship to their forests, like all those things should, I believe, come into our understanding of the spirits we work with or the practices we adopt. So if I'm going to adopt a reverence for spiders because when they're in my corner, they bring me good luck, I'm going to Google what cultures believe that. And that's not to say you're going to only find one answer. Baba Yaga is a good example because she's myriad. She's in today we could say 18 countries, something like that, have Baba Yaga mythology. That's great. But know that, learn that and know, wow, this is really complicated and broad. I'll never know all the ins and outs. That's fine. You're not supposed to. You don't have to. But knowing a bit about that origin is incumbent on the practitioner, I believe, to take responsibility for.
Enrollment closes March 30th. What am I talking about? The Rebel Moon 28-day immersion that begins April 17th. This is a personalized moon magic journey, a full immersion that brings you back to your practice day by day, phase by phase, complete with your own unique moon archetype and a grimoire I build for you for this practice. Like I said, enrollment closes March 30th, so you only have a few more days to sign up. Check the link in the show notes or visit leandrawitchwood.com to learn more. That reminds me of one of the animal spirits I've been working with lately. And there's a lot of lore around this animal because it is such a small and mighty animal. So the one I've been working with lately is Wren. And there's a lot of lore around Wren. And the reason I'm working with Wren is because they love, right outside my office door, before I go into the house, there's a cabinet there that we don't go into. It's filled with junk. It needs to be cleaned out, but I won't because they nest in there every single year. And so I look at this little bird, this little teeny tiny loud bird. They're kind of the guardians of my threshold there. But if you're looking at the folklore around this bird, it has many meanings. So in Celtic folklore, it is known as the king of birds, but it's also known as, it also carries the symbol of betrayal or traitor. And that matters because in Native American lore, and this is the mashup of what my grandparents taught me, is that they're also a bird of war and courage. They defend. So in like Pueblo rites, I think Hopi lore, they embody that spirit of the warrior. And there's so many mythological tales. So it depends on where you're coming from. Like, well, are you coming from the southeast? Are you coming from the northwest? Where this bird migrates, where it lives, there's going to be different lore related to the different peoples that encounter this bird. In my own personal gnosis, this bird is about courage. It's about speaking up loudly for yourself, being small but mighty, right?
Yeah.
And being that guardian of the threshold. And that wisdom is held in sometimes the most unassuming packages. And so I embody all of these messages, being the king of birds, but also being the warrior, the courageous warrior. And that they're joyful, they're resilient, like they embody so many different things. But if you just said, oh, this is the warrior bird, and with no context, well, where did that come from? Yeah. Where did you get that information? And how did you make that association?
Example too, because you said in Celtic traditions, the wren is seen as the betrayer. I've not Googled this before this meeting, but I remember reading at some point in my Druid coursework about the wren. I think that's from a Welsh myth. So Celtic is another monolith that people throw out there, which is not accurate. You know, Celtic is describing 7 different cultures. Are we talking about Wales? Yeah. Are we talking about the Bretons? Are we talking about the Isle of Man? Are we talking about Cornwall, Scotland, Ireland? And then really Ireland is 2 cultures now. So depending what folklore is from northern or southern, even just, you know, county to county, Sligo is very different, you know, than Kilkenny. Like it's very important to recognize. And this is where you can get lost in the weeds. And I don't want people to feel like, oh my gosh, I just want to know what a wren is, Elise. My God, please leave me alone. but this is where we bring it back to its relationship. So my relationship to wren is very similar to yours. My favorite tarot deck ever. I wish I could I should honestly reach out to the Matthews who created this deck because I love it so much. But John Matthews and Kayla Matthews made the deck, the Wildwood Tarot, and Will Worthington did the art. And they really channeled with the animals of this tarot deck. And the wren is, I should remember what suit he's in, but he's a king card. And in the card, he's in the snow. And that's what I always latch onto about the wren is what I learned from that deck, is that the wren does not migrate. It is a tiny little bird, but it weathers the storms of winter. And so that's what I always take away from the wren is it doesn't need to be imposing to survive. Much bigger and stronger birds choose to go south. But the little wren stands fast in the face of danger. Yeah. So that's how I resonate with wren as well, as the small and mighty.
Yeah. Well, and they're clever too. And that's where I resonate further with them is they're clever. They build dummy nests around.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So they usually have 1 or 2 nests where they actually like nest, where they raise their young. But they will go around wherever they are and they'll build dummy nests where they're just fake outs to fool predators because they're freaking smart.
So cool.
And they're so curious too. They're just so curious.
And I'm sure you learned a lot of this by observing them, by spending time experiencing them, which is the next step here. So we learn something, it tickles something in our brains or our hearts. or we witness something, it tickles us inside somehow, it changes our day, it makes us think. That's where we begin. That's all it takes. And from there, we start engaging with it. So I think that's also, again, I feel like this is the resounding message of our whole podcast, but get out there and do it, build those relationships, observe.
Hell yeah.
And it doesn't have to look like spell work. You don't have to do an invocation to the wren. You don't have to light a candle. You just observe, listen. What does the wren have to share with you?
Mm-hmm. Maybe leave them a little offering. They love the little mealworms.
Yeah. Those are the
They're
things
adorable.
that I think are the most tangible things to take on. So yeah, looking for where folklore can be originated from, how you can research that. It will bring you closer to the thing. I had an experience with it. Sometimes it goes this way too. Sometimes we see it online or in a book and we're like, oh, I want to learn more about that. And then we start researching the cultural attributions and, find our way through. Other times it's the other way. So you might have an experience in the real world. You see a wren. For me, it was daylilies. I'd never given them over much thought. I remember as a kid, my mom always had them. Like when I would come down from the bus stop, that was like the first flower I'd see at the house. And that would be where I would greet them first when I would go outside to play after school. So I remember them in my life, but they were never my favorite flower. But over the summer, they became a teacher for me. I felt them calling me, and I planted some in my house and just began sitting with them and began crying with them. And I didn't Google anything. I just was having these experiences. And then I started journaling on them. And it was through journaling the experiences I was having with daylily that I said, you know what? This is just so interesting. They're helping me move grief specifically around mother wounds. That was what I noticed in my journaling, in my interaction with the daylily. So then I started looking it up. And sure enough, in Chinese medicine, daylily is a flower that helps us grieve our mothers. Mm-hmm. So that blew my mind because it was so on point. But then I did other research, and daylily in Greek is imerokalis. So exactly, daylily. So it's tied to the goddess of the dawn and the day and new beginnings. And so I was able to see a lot of what I was personally experiencing without any knowledge of its cultural significances anywhere in the world. I was personally experiencing this from the plant and then able to affirm that with some research, which was really, really powerful. So I think that's the other thing to say is sometimes we don't need to batten down the hatches of, okay, I can't do anything until I know everything about the culture that it's from.
Right.
It is a balance.
Absolutely.
Because you're building relationship.
Yeah. And that's one thing I have my students do is when we're doing work with plants, I will lay out a selection of plants for them and have them choose the one that's calling to them, which one wants to work with them. And that's one of the readings I do. Okay, you chose chamomile. That's telling me that you need some soothing. You need some hydration. You need to take care of yourself. And before we even get into what that plant is about, I let them commune with that plant. What is that plant telling you? And then we look it up, pull out a book. We, pull up a reference, or I just, rattle it off of my reserves in my head. But it's important to just connect first sometimes, then know about it, then understand why you connected with it and where that comes from. And personal gnosis is going to play a big part in a lot of this.
So I want to take a moment to speak to the people who are creators online, people who post reels or educational information for their communities, whether that's publicly or privately. And I want to encourage a little more scholarship in these things. And I really think it doesn't come from a place of disrespect, but I do see a lot of this just comes from folklore, comes from tradition, with no attribution to what that means or what culture that is. And then I also see a lot of people talking about goddesses without attributing them to the culture or the pantheon that they come from. And I think that's very dangerous because imagine if somebody, honestly, it's like people. If I met someone And let's pretend accents give away a lot, but let's pretend we met just texting and I'm trying to understand how to be a better friend to this person. If I don't know their culture, if I don't know if English is their first or second language, if I don't know, if they grew up a certain way or not, like it's going to at some point be very hard to get to know that person. You have to know a little bit about where they came from before they knew you to be the best friend you can be. For your relationship to really grow, you have to know them in deeper ways than just, oh yeah, we met at this thing. And that is the reality for our relationships with deities as well. We have to learn a little bit about their home cultures. And if we aren't willing to, maybe they're not the deity for you. And I don't say that you have to become an expert. Like, I think people, it's always a catch-22 to say things like this because there's somebody out there who does their diligence already and they're like, oh, I'm not doing it enough. And they start to feel guilt and shame. I am not talking to y'all. I'm talking to the ones who maybe for the first time ever, maybe you're getting triggered and you're like, Elise, I don't know if that's fair. That's okay. Just sit with it. I'm not being accusatory at all. I think for people who grow up in one culture, they just don't know how many times they do that. I really do. I've never seen it done maliciously, or at least that I knew of. It's always from a place of reverence. But I do see it a lot. Like I'll see people talk about Hecate and not attribute her as Greek. Just talk about her as if goddess of witches, end of story. Well, she's Greek.
And I think part of that might be the assumption that people already know, that they just know that she's Greek.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be that too.
And
But sadly, I mean, I just know from the questions I'll get on certain posts on social media, I think assuming a level of knowledge in a public post. Now, this is your course, ignore it, But if this is a public facing post, maybe there is just a need to be more explicit about cultural attribution sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially when we're in such a framework of cultural appropriation where things have been colonized and adopted as belonging to a certain culture where it really doesn't. And it's hard sometimes to tease that out. Like, where did that come from? Where we were talking before this, like the idea that the new year, you're not supposed to clean. You're supposed to do it all before, and then you just rest on the new year. And then I'm talking about the Gregorian New Year. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it. I'm like, where did that come from? Because I know in my experience, that was never a tradition.
Yeah, me either.
So I'm like, where did that come from? So I started doing my own research and I found out it's actually attributed to the Chinese New Year. The Chinese New Year, what the tradition is, you clean, you do everything the day before. And then on the day that marks the Chinese New Year, that's a day to rest. It's a day to be positive, no fighting, no quarreling, no cleaning, because you did that before. You cleaned out all the old energy, all the old bad luck, all the old stagnant energy. You did that the day before so that when you step into the new year, you are acting and being and energetically different. So you're setting yourself up for good luck for the next year. And I'm like, okay, so that's where that came from. Now I know why I was confused, because it's not something, and keep in mind, my godparents were Chinese. I never saw them do that on the Gregorian first year. I did see them do that when the Chinese New Year came around. Like, Helen was a cleaning madwoman, and I didn't understand it because I was little, I was just over there like, oh, you want me to dust this for you? Cool. Okay, we're going to dust, and yeah, so there is this, sometimes we just infuse things into our culture or into our lives, into our thought patterns as tradition. I'm using air quotes, and it's not our tradition. It came from somewhere else. So understanding where that came from is important.
You can still
another New Year. Oh yeah, you can still do it. I mean, it holds validity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's like another New Year's tradition,
where it comes from, but just keep doing it.
Right.
Of course. If it works, go for it.
If it works for you, it works for you. Another tradition that I ran into when I first moved to Pennsylvania was the idea on New Year's you have to eat pork for luck. Pork and sauerkraut. You have to eat those. Yes, those two things. And that is a Pennsylvania Dutch thing. I don't know if it specifically came from Germany, because everybody I've talked to, I'm like, why do we do this? Where did it come from? Nobody can answer the question for me. So if somebody out there knows, I'd love to hear the history of it, because like my husband's family, they're all very German. Most people here in South Central Pennsylvania, they're very German, Deutschland, you know? Mm-hmm. So but nobody has been able to explain to me where it really came from. It's just, that's just a tradition. And that's the narrative you get. Oh, it's just a tradition. It's just something we do.
Yeah.
All right. I like to know why, because I want to know more.
Yeah. And that's why we're all on this path. Like, I think witches ask why. I mean, we just do. It's why we're here. It's why we left monotheism for many of us. There's not enough asking of why. So keep asking why.
And I want to know, did it come from specifically German cultures, or did it come from?
Because Pennsylvania Dutch is a mistranslation of Deutsch, which means German. So they're, but some are from Holland. Like, some did come from Holland.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no clue where
some
she
of them
came
have.
From, but my great grandmother's PA Dutch was PA Dutch. And
okay.
We did the same thing. Even I don't eat pork. I haven't eaten pork since I was like 13 when I watched Food Inc. and learned that pigs have absolutely no representation in the animal harm reduction industry. So, and they're
sentient.
Smart. Yeah, they're and they give us so much. You know, we use their hearts, we use their insulin, we use so much. I mean, they've literally given us the ability to live as long as we live. To eat them as well feels very offensive to me. So I don't eat pork. I haven't for a very long time. But my mom she's like, please eat the sauerkraut. Like, she'll call me. We don't live in the same country right now. Yeah. She will call me and be like, did you eat sauerkraut today? So yeah, and I joke, I have 1 million pig stuffed animals and like statues and crystals shaped like pigs. I mean, I have so many pigs in my house. And so I like put one next to a Glücksschwein. So again, a Pennsylvania Dutch tradition. We have 1 million in the kitchen for good luck. And I put them next to the pot while the sauerkraut cooks. I don't usually eat hot sauerkraut, but I do on New Year's just for the good luck. You know, I'm superstitious at the end of the day. So you can, and this is such a good example of adapting a tradition as well. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what we want to say is we're not trying to box you in either, because I want to speak to multiculturalism a little bit here to wrap us up. Mm-hmm. Too often, and again, this is not coming from a place of harm. I know that, but I do see a lot of people try to box people in. People try to box me in all the time. Oh, but you're Greek. Oh, but you're American.
Yeah, and
I'm both. I'm literally both things. And I'm both. People need to be okay with that, you know? And it's uncomfortable.
We're mutts.
Yeah. Like, I have nationalities in both countries. I've lived my life essentially equally in both cultures. I'm not going to pick just one. It wouldn't be true to me. It wouldn't be true to my path. And it wouldn't be fair for anyone in my life to want me to. So same goes for you, listener. You deserve to be all of your multitudes. Our goddesses, maybe not all of them, but all of them. Honestly, every goddess I think of are multitudes. Bridget, she's hearth and home, fire, creation, smithcraft, poetry, also healer of wells, savior of women in childbirth. I mean, look at this myriad. We going to box Bridget in, tell her pick one? I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let the syncretism be okay. You know, it's okay if your understanding of something is not matching up with what Google says, especially if that Google is the AI result, because that thing is all kinds of messed up. So
it is all kinds of messed up.
Don't use AI mode on Google search. It is a nightmare. It's wrong all the time. Like, it didn't even know when Catherine O'Hara passed away. I looked it up I saw it on like Threads. So I looked it up and it was like, she's still alive. And I was like, then why is everyone saying it?
No,
and I realized, that's the AI result. As soon as you scroll a little, the truth was right there.
Yeah.
So
you gotta turn it off. Yeah, for sure. Well, and in traditions, so like creating our own traditions, we are a good example of it, because we come from tradition, but then we're also creating our own tradition.
Yeah.
And knowing what traditions you're incorporating into your specific tradition are important. Because you want to know that lineage. You want to know where it came from. Where does it originate? How old is it? You know, is it some new trend that you just got off of social media that you decided was cool and you're going to incorporate? Or is this something that has been used for centuries probably by your ancestors too, but nobody documented it. Nobody talked about it because you didn't talk about witchy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or they throw it away as maybe they didn't want to go into the origins because it's too witchy.
Yes, because it's too witchy, because the church would not approve. And a lot of what we experience, everything that we are in our culture, is influenced by the patriarchal monotheistic model. And in our current socioeconomic uprising, the veil's being pulled off of our eyes of how much we're influenced by a very small group of specifically men.
Yeah.
And so our women in our lineage would have felt intimidated to share certain things about where they came from and how they practiced. They would have kept some things very, very quiet, very silent, very secret. And I'm coming from a position where my ancestors were run out of Scotland under the accusation of witchcraft. So we did keep things quiet, but we adapted when we got here. My ancestors took what traditions that they understood that they wanted to continue with and adapted them when they got here. So in that sense alone, it became its own tradition. It became its own beast or its own experience using what they had in this new place.
Yeah. And let's talk about new. New. If something is new, that doesn't automatically mean it's less powerful. So I'll tell a little short story. When Gerald Gardner et al. Began their work of publicizing witchcraft and writing books on it, and first of all, that could only begin after the Witchcraft Act, making witchcraft illegal in the UK, was repealed. So it's, I think, 1954, off the top of my head. I think it's around there. So
yeah, I think you're right.
After that, that's when it all begins. And there was a real push for credibility in those movements. Mm-hmm. And this is pre-internet. This is back when you could kind of sort of tell people, oh, this is ancient. We have a text. We can't show you, but it's in the back. So they would kind of do that. Yeah. They were like, oh, this is a direct continuance. This Wicca stuff, this has been done by the secret witch cult for thousands of years. That was not true. That was not true.
No, it wasn't.
But out of that movement came women like Doreen Valiente, who wrote The Charge of the Goddess, one of the most beautiful poems. I think direct channeled wisdom from the goddess. I mean, I love the way she wrote that because she introduces us to dozens of goddesses and leaves room for more interpretation beyond it. But I perhaps unsurprisingly, see a Nana in that. I see Doreen Valiente's Charge of the Goddess as a direct continuance of the priestess lineage of Enheduanna from Sumeria. Because if you read those poems of Inanna and then you read Charge of the Goddess, there she is. It's my body and soul will not, argue with me and my logic brain about that if it's too real. But just because she wrote that in the 70s, does that mean it's less powerful than something from Sumeria? Not at all.
No.
Also, a lot of our sources for ancient Greece were essentially blog posts. They were single, rich, white guys. Well, Greek guys. That's a whole other thing. Were Greeks white or not? That could be a whole thing. I might do a podcast episode on my show about it if people are interested, because Greece was appropriated as a white culture in the 1800s by the British to justify their colonization of it. But anyway, before that, they were considered barbarians and colored. So that's a whole layer here. But I think things that are new, we'll call them new in quotation marks, because we've lost so much source material. We've lost so much of it. And sometimes the only way for these traditions to be relayed to us is through personal gnosis.
Yeah.
When I go to an unexcavated oracle site and I'm the first priestess on that land in over 2,000 years, and I pick up my frame drum and I drop into trance, and those land spirits welcome me back and give me a song and say, do you remember this song you used to sing? Raise your arms like this. There you go. Do you remember this? And then it works and I'm in connection and I can teach that to others on pilgrimage and they get to experience it too. Could you imagine if I just said, oh no, but there's no book on it and just shut it all down?
Right.
That would be such a disservice.
There's no source material.
Yeah. That'd be such a disservice to spirit to ignore it simply because it didn't write it down. Or that those writings, let's remind ourselves, probably did exist and were destroyed by the patriarchy.
Destroyed. Oh, yeah.
So in your journey.
Oh, my God, how much have we lost?
Oh, my God. I can't even. When I think of the Library of Alexandria, I just, I can't. I actually
And that's
can't
just
do
one
it too
example. Yeah, that's just one example of how many things were lost. And I relate to what you're saying, because if I'm going out to talk with the trees, I'm not asking them to give me source materials.
Yeah.
I'm just letting them speak to me. I'm letting them tell me what they want. Do they want voice? Do they want water? Do they want me to bury an apple at their roots? Like, what do they want? What is the message they have for me? What is the associations I need to have right now? Instead of, well, it's not written in a book, so you're both full of crap, telling the tree that they're full of crap.
Because even the sources that we'll find, I mean, they're not necessarily overly reliable. So really, I guess the whole point of this is to just increase your awareness, understand where you can attribute to a culture and do it. Hecate's Greek, easy, true. Put it in there. Yeah. Mention it. But then also be comfortable with knowing that your relationship to any given thing, whether that's an animal messenger, the symbolism of a color, the way you raise your arms or sit in ritual or stand or, your posture, all of these things are going to be personal. What works for you is going to be different than what works for me, Leandra, your friend, even somebody you do ritual with. She might hold her palms up, you hold yours down. Doesn't mean anyone's doing it wrong. But when there are elements of respect we can give back to who gave it to us, we should do that as well, because that's an offering. That's the reciprocity a truly grounded and aligned spiritual path is asking of you.
Merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.
Thank you for joining us on the Magic Kitchen podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com, for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elise Wells. You can learn more about my current offerings and my upcoming retreats to Greece at elisewells.com. That's ELYSEWELLES.com. Did you know you can get a free reading from me every single Wednesday at 10 a.m.? Join me in my live devotional space for Sacred Wild Wednesdays. We gather live on a webinar for free readings with oracle texts and tarot decks, magical musings on the moment, and some grounded spiritual guidance rooted in land. If you're craving a pause, a recalibration, and some community, you are so warmly invited to join us. Visit elisewells.com/sacredwildwednesdays to register and get the link straight to your inbox every Wednesday.